This is Bill. Can you hear me?
Hey, Bill, this is Jason Coyle. I can hear you. I think they're having some feedback issues that they're working through.
Okay, great. I'll just wait. Thank you.
Can you hear us now?
This is Bill. I can hear you.
Okay.
Right. Well, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Good afternoon. Well, we got a little bit of feedback. Yeah, we just hit that. Get it from that speaker.
Are we good now?
Well,
1, 2, 3. One, two, three.
sounds good.
On and not coming back to us, that's all.
Okay. All right, so we have the first budget workshop of the 2023 budget year. And actually, before we get started, just make a quick introduction. I know Mr. Chair, you had the opportunity to meet him, but I have Dominic Pelosa with our office. He's one of our newer CPAs on staff. Been on this a couple months now, and it's going to be see more of him as we go through this budget process this year. So,
Welcome aboard.
So really, what I want to kind of cover today with our initial budget workshop is what are our objectives of the budget. It's just some fire district funding. I know we've got a new board member this year, so I'd like to kind of reiterate how the whole mechanisms of our funding streams work. We do have some budget numbers already, so we'll present some of the initial numbers that we've gotten up to the state. Let you know where we're at from a projection standpoint from where we were last year when we adopted the budget, what we're projecting this year to look like, what are our ongoing financial goals, and the budget schedule that's been developed for this year has been asked for any kind of discussion or board direction. Before I get started, I believe the chief was going to get us going here.
Sure. So, the last couple of fiscal years, I always wanted to share with the board as we kick off and the subsequent workshops, just what's the strategy of staff. So, heard a lot of this. I'm hoping maybe this fiscal year you memorize it. You may just put your hand up, but this actually is really important. So, here's our strategy as staff with this budget. We're going to provide a budget accurate to the district's needs. We're going to be as effective and efficient as possible from a fiduciary standpoint. We are going to forecast district needs. We're going to continue to develop and implement initiatives to manage the budget. And you'll see that we integrate our strategic plan with the budget. So these are strategies I know most of you have heard, but we're going to continue to center on those in subsequent workshops, and you'll just here this every fiscal year, because we really wanna be true to that dollar, and we feel that these are really effective strategies. So, introducing that, then we'll kick it back over to Gabe, and he can go through, the workshop today. Thank you.
All right. Trying to CIO some stuff over here as well. So starting off, we got our assessed value numbers, last week. You'll see our primary source of funding is that tax levy revenue. And as you know from these year's budget reports, monthly reports, that, it does make up, a rather significant portion of our revenue. And it's calculated based on two components, the assessed value and the mill rate. And then that assessed value and that mill rate's based on per hundred of assessed value. So we saw a total increase of 4.7%. Yavapai went up 5.4%, and Coconino increased only 2.52%. So if we did nothing with the tax rate, that equates to another $765,000 in revenue. I will point out, if you remember, a couple of years ago, we hired an economist to project out our assessed value growth over the next 10 years. I believe we maybe have 4 or 5 years of that projection left. And we have 4.8 in there for projected for this year, so pretty close to those projections. Looking at non-levy revenues, we are actually really happy to report. So our ambulance rate is regulated by the state. And there's 2 ways your rate changes from time to time. One is you actually do a general rate increase where you apply to the state and say, hey, I want to raise our rate to this number. And you go through basically the administrative process with the Department of Health Services, and they analyze your finances, your request, and approve or deny or change the rate that you requested. The other thing they do is they have what's called an automatic deflator. And every year, they look at different consumer price index as it relates to healthcare, and they recommend or they give us a rate, a percentage increase. Historically, that's averaged about 2% a year. Last year, it was actually a negative number, so we obviously didn't apply for it, because it would have lowered our base rate. Well, this year, the annual automatic rate increase is 11.6%, which is about $150,000 to $200,000 of additional ambulance revenue we'll see next year by just simply sending a letter to DHS and saying, yep, we want that. So we'll go ahead and get that in and make sure that that's in place prior to the July 1 budget year. Sedona also has some other kind of sources of revenue. We have our telecom and communication rentals, so there are other agencies that have equipment on our radio towers, and whether it's a cell phone company or other public safety agencies, and we receive revenue for that. We also are have a very involved wildland program that goes out on deployments, and in turn we get reimbursed for our expenses. And then they also pay us a fee for use of our equipment and apparatus, which is where we see some additional revenue, where we kind of see that profit from wildland. And then we just have some other miscellaneous revenues, prevention fees, donations, and a little bit of interest income in our money in the county. One of the struggles we've had over the years is Prop 117 changed the assessed value from the full cash to the limited property, and limited that increase in assessed value growth to 5%. Now you say, wait, Gabe, Yavapai went up 5.4%. So existing properties cannot grow more than 5%, but when we see numbers over 5%, that means we've had new properties added to the tax rolls. The other thing that happened in last legislative cycle was the tax omnibus bill, which increased the cap rate from $3.25 to $3.37 for this budget year. It'll be $3.50 in fiscal year '24. But that came with a caveat, of course, that now they're actually lowering the assessment on commercial property from 18% to 16%. So we'll see a 0.5% drop in our commercial assessed value over the next 4 years. And this year that impacts about $60,000. So we went up, we had the increase of the 4.7%, but we lost $60,000 of commercial assessment. And so we have kind of both of those things impacting us as we go forward. But as we develop the budget, you know, keep that in mind that the legislature saw fit to adjust our cap because of lost revenue. So we may, when we're developing the budget and finding what number balances that budget, we'll need to adjust that tax rate to be able to bring in line that lost revenue and balance that budget. Any questions so far on the revenue piece?
Yeah, Gabe, you mentioned, that we've projected out 10 years. How far back historically have we gone, when we figure out, try to identify where we've been so we could apply it to where we're going?
So we look, so the 10-year, so we do a 10-year projected budget forward. We have the economists look out and project what we'd anticipate in assessed value growth for 10 years. But when we look at our actual expenses, we look at a smaller window. We look at about a 5-year historical average and use that as our basis to project forward. Especially as we get into the numbers and as we go through this budget cycle this year, you guys are gonna see there's a lot of volatility, and where our growth is gonna be this year.
You're gonna provide us copies of these slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
So, on the expense side, kind of some of the significant numbers we have. So in all of our budgets, we have kind of what I call are the budget starters. We have our PSPRS rate, which is our public safety pension. We have what our assessed value is gonna be. We have what our workers' comp's gonna be, and what we have our healthcare to be. And then we obviously evaluate what our, you know, Social Security, historically, we use Social Security COLA as a basis for a COLA, cost of living adjustment for staff. Our PSPRS went up 3.32%. And when I say it went up 3.32%, that's a contribution rate of 3%. So for every $100 of payroll, that's $3 in cost. So that went up. ASRS actually went down 0.24%. So if we did nothing with our payroll, kept everybody where they're at today, no increases, that impact on PSPRS is gonna be $265,000. Then we look at, as I mentioned before, we look at what Social Security has done as far as a baseline for our cost of living adjustment, and that year is 5.9%. So if we apply a cost of living increase of 5.9, plus the increase in pension costs we have, we're already at an increase of $900,000 in personnel costs in this budget. And, I mean, to be fair, that is our cost of doing business. Those are hard costs that districts have very little control over. Obviously, you can decide some on the COLA, but you have to provide the pension benefit to staff. And so that's something that's outside of our control. We've discussed at the pension board meeting some of the stuff we've seen at, and hope to see stability going forward. To be fair, we're starting to see it, but it's gonna be a slow process. And then the final big number that we have right now is our workers' comp. And again, it's not a firm number, but the increase is projected to be anywhere from 90 to 100% increase from what we're paying today. And I believe we're at $470,000 this year, so we'd anticipate, you know, workers' comp going up to over $900,000 next year.
Why the big jump? 100% is pretty big jump.
Yes, so a couple things. One, COVID hit workers' comp pretty hard, and to the point where we may actually see an assessment at the end of this year, for that COVID impact, but more so the increase is due to the presumptive cancer legislation that was passed. And if you remember when the workers' comp pool was set up, they just kind of duplicated what the pricing of where the private provider was. It never had the actuarial done on what that impact of the presumptive cancer would be. They now have that cost, and now that's what they're projecting. The private insurers, so you know, they're not immune to it. They've already have an approved rate increase of 90% by the Department of Insurance. And then, so the only other big personnel cost number we're waiting on is health insurance. We usually don't get firm numbers until April, And then obviously, as you remember from meet and confer last year, it was a 2-year MOU, so there won't be any meet and confer this year, which obviously, staff pay and benefits as part of the MOU can have, significant budget. So I know I just gave you guys, a lot of information there. Is there any questions on this?
All things being equal, if nothing changed except for these projected increases that we have no control over, how big of a dollar amount is that, that we have to cover one way or the other?
Right, so if we essentially didn't do a COLA, we said, all right, no COLA this year, and so we look at, to Mr. Camello's point, what is just our specific outside of district control increases? It's the PSPS of $265,000, and then roughly another $400,000 on workers' comp, so we're already at, $660,000, $700,000 in increases, just on those two items alone.
Thank you.
But,
Probably 5.
yeah, probably around 5% on healthcare, thank you.
Gabe, across the board in the state here, COLA's taken a pretty big jump. There's such a thing as a COLA bank, in that you set a limit. Those years where it's above, you go to that limit, and years where it's below, you provide the difference from that bank to maintain a steady, whatever you choose it to be, instead of having these big fluctuations that we're looking at right now.
Right, yeah, so some organizations do that, they look at, you know what, we're gonna give on average a 3% COLA every year, so if inflation's only 2%, well, you got 3% that year, so that kind of builds up to where when you see these big jumps, they've gotten that adjustment year over year, over the years. Sedona's historical policy, and it's been purely my practice, is to start with Social Security, and then if you remember a couple of years ago, I think it's around when the bond election was going on and we were trying to keep budget growth at a certain level, we presented the board with scenario A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a 1% COLA, a 2% at mid-year, and then I forget what the other scenario was. It allows the board to see kind of that financial impact and make that decision.
I can make a comment too on the COLA, just to keep in mind. So, as we do the analysis on where we're gonna end with that, bear in mind, we always wanna keep our pay and benefits in that market range. In other words, it's the same concept that we want budget growth to be that steady line, not a spike up or spike down. So that's why, staff, we're always looking to support COLAs, and again, we have to look carefully and do a data analysis on this, because it keeps us in that market range, and it keeps it from wide swings. So in other words, if we don't do any adjustment this year, what's next year look like? If it gets us 10, 12% out of market value, so, and why is that important, right? Well, right now, they're testing for firefighter all over the state, very competitive. We want the best candidate. We want to keep in that market range, so we have a competitive package to offer. So, just, like, if the board can keep that in mind as we do the analysis and kind of walk. The other thing I was gonna say, looking at preliminary numbers, the workers' comp obviously is a big deal. Dave said related to cancer legislation, related to COVID, which no one really had a control over. But AFTA at the state level does have some legislation that we're trying to push to offset that. So, because of the cancer component, there is legislation that we're pushing to provide some seed money to build that fund up, so fire districts don't take the hit premiums till we get enough seed money in there to manage those claims, because the cancer claims are super high dollar. COVID is too, especially the line of duty death. So, there are a couple initiatives out there, and we'll see what the voters do, but again, it's not numbers out there and everyone's just going, oh, well, it is what it is. There's actually some active work to try to get some offset and try to handle those issues at a higher strategic level.
Okay, that it for your workshop?
No, we got more.
Okay. Darn. Okay. Let me interrupt right there. So for Gabe, do we have any further questions as we move forward?
Oh, I just have a comment, just driving in today, that inflation rose 9% last month. 1 month, 9%. So, there's no, end in sight other than to anticipate, our needs for the future.
So, when we moving on and looking at kind of what we had projected for the 23 budget when we adopted the 22 budget. And again, as we kind of mentioned before, we have sound, information that we use to develop our projections. And we were anticipating only about a 4.9% increase in our total budget, going from 19.7 to 20.7. But obviously, with some of these things that we're having to incur with next year, both on our personnel benefits and workers' compensation, you know, these are a starting point, but they may not be what comes up in reality. And again, because we look at historical, use sound, defendable reasoning for our projections to make sure that the decisions we make are sustainable in the future, but we don't always have a 100% increase in workers' comp programmed into those projections. And so, while we do spend a lot of time and a lot of energy planning, there are times where stuff like this occurs and we're kind of caught off guard. But fortunately, to look at, we have a strong community, a strong assessed value. We have a lot of capacity with added capacity now with the new tax omnibus bill change. So we're in a strong place to be able to absorb some of these things early.
Okay, question, the projected you have up here, was this projected last year, or it's what you project? Because this doesn't include any of what you've talked about.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So, just reiterating kind of, to what Chief said as far as what staff's goals are and what we envision the goals of the budget are. And obviously, the development of that balanced budget, while making sure we meet the operational needs of the community. Because we could have a balanced budget that's one fire engine for the entire area, and that's not meeting the needs of the community. And so that's the first step, and that's what staff is busy doing right now, is gathering what their requests are and what they need to be able to effectively run their divisions, run their programs within the organization to deliver the services. Obviously, we are constantly trying to deal with these management of the increases in expenditures. You know, Mr. McCarthy's point out what inflation was last month alone. We're getting hit on all sides from increasing costs on everything. And so it's gonna be a little bit more of a challenge this budget cycle on some things, and we've spoken with staff in the staff budget workshop that, hey, this is a year where we really need you to tighten your pencils and identify what your needs are, and try to keep it conservative, understanding that we're gonna be impacted by a lot of other things. Other thing we're always gonna continue to do is grow our operating and capital funds. So, we do have a funded capital plan that we provide level funding to. That's one of the other initiatives with this budget cycle staff is working on, is really fine-tuning their capital needs requests and identifying items that have already been purchased that we don't need to have on there anymore versus items that have unfortunately increased for what we originally thought they were. We want to continue to fund for end leave liability. As of June 30th, we're about $1.5 million in end leave liability, which means if everybody retired today, that's how much we have to pay out in compensated absences, sick and vacation. Obviously, we don't anticipate everybody leaving within one day, but we do, as our personnel become tenured, we have a lot of people that are at a point where they are eligible to leave. We want to make sure that we have enough funds set aside to pay them out and not have to affect the operating budget. And then finally, the other thing I'm actually happy to report is, our financial reserves. We've got a very strong financial reserve balance. GFOA, based on our economic factors, we should be around 16.7%. And, we achieved that goal in June 30th of 20. So our goal is always, though, to maintain that, and obviously as our budget increases, that goal increases as well. Questions on this?
Not yet.
All right. Finally, kind of schedule and game plan for budget. Yes, Secretary Lowe's. There we go. So right now through March, it's really meeting with program managers and developing budget planning. We did have the, staff meeting, last month, and on January 10th, we provided, all the program managers and division heads their budget request forms so they could start working on their budget. Those were all due to their supervisors yesterday. Obviously today, we're here with our initial board workshop on February 15th. By February 21st, the capital requests are due to Chief Coyle and Chief Mizoulis. And by February 4th, all the budget requests to finance. Again, we'll be continuing from now till May, getting different costs. There's always gonna be some kind of lagger, whether it's our commercial insurance or some kind of quote that we're waiting on firming up, but we'll make sure we have, you know, placeholders within the budget. My hope is to have at the March 15th board meeting, a fully loaded draft budget. Depending on when we get the requests and how quickly we can turn that around, it may impact if I'm able to have that at that March 15th meeting. If not, it'll be out there shortly after that, to where the board will now have kind of a budget that they can start looking through. The April meeting will really be that true board meeting where we present the entire budget to the board, maybe pending a few quotes. And we're really gonna need that feedback when we start hitting that March and April board meeting of, yes, we like this budget, or we'd like to see this differently, or you guys are on the wrong page, you know, so getting that feedback, because when we come to the May board meeting, that's where we're gonna ask for tentative adoption. So we can always still make changes. By statute, the budget has to be adopted by August 1st. But it'd be nice if we have that May budget that you can ask for tentative adoption in May, that we're now just waiting our statutory 20 days, and then we'll come on the June board meeting, actually have the public hearing, and ask for final adoption of the budget.
Traditionally, that's what it has been.
Yes, it has been. So with that, any questions or direction?
Well, I just want to point out, unless the board has any other comments they would like to make, that this is probably the pivotal point since I've been on this board, where we're gonna cross a major threshold pretty easily, in the total amount. I often wonder, being a resident, at what point does the community say, hey, wait a minute, time out? Because from our point of view, it's the cost of doing business, cost of bringing the service that you request and require of us, and not a penny more. And the ability to market that concept to our community members of whose money we are receiving, I can see we're gonna come to that kind of meeting of the minds somewhere down the road. So I think as long as we maintain as much transparency as we can, as long as we maintain as much fiduciary responsibility and making sure that of those things that require an extra little bit more monetarily, show me what we're giving up, because you can't have it all. So I think as far as direction goes, let's continue to move in a forward direction with the budgetary workshops. Let's keep those numbers in mind that are being projected now, that the numbers are as they are, but we may have to look in a downward direction rather than upward, in order to meet all the goals that we have within the budget. I will tell you now, and I'll tell the public at the same time, that this is not an easy, take it for granted process. It is something that, we take to heart, each and every line item that is gonna be coming our way. So with that said, unless there's anything else, that is the direction. Let's continue work in a direction that we can come to a resolution at the end of this process that we're all happy with.
I do have one sort of
Yes.
question, comment. Being new to the process, are we provided, are we as board members provided with information in detail in advance of meetings, go through it and understand it, or is it going, when we come to the budget workshop, is it all presentation? Because for me, I would like to be able to dive into it and come to the meeting with a question, not trying to pull the question out.
Yeah, so initially, no, it's presentation at the budget workshop, because that's how quickly we're getting this. I didn't get all of these numbers until Friday. As we get towards that fully developed budget, there will be that entire budget document going to you ahead of time, so you can look through it, read through it, identify the line items that you have questions on.
Great, thank you.
I think even with that, the ability to receive the entire package, try to digest it before a meeting, is a lot to get hit with all at once. And the ability to get bits and pieces as they come about will at least allow us to raise a question as to, hey, what is with this? Now, we can have that ability at any time, but, to see it hard copy, if you will, whether it's via website or not, or however we want to get it, email, text, maybe something we want to look at. Because again, we're kind of getting in uncharted territory for the total amounts that we're starting to see will be coming down the pipe. So, I guess that, to answer your question, if we can gather information that will at least raise questions before we see the total package, because it is a decent document in volume. Okay.
And I'm also thinking it's helpful, even like what you've shown today. There's obviously a frame. Frame is, there's our mill rate and the revenue that we project based on what you have. Then there is all the expenses that we have right now with the changes you project. At the bottom line, what are we really talking about in terms of the dollars that we have some flex on? For me, that would be helpful, just to be able to have the frame, knowing it's all gonna change. But frame is helpful to me. It would be helpful to me if I were a staff member, but certainly helpful to me as a board member to have that kind of idea to know what we're playing with.
I'm not sure on what we're playing with, but I think the one thing is that constant change in chief. So 2 years ago, we developed kind of a dashboard that kind of gives us, here are all these items and the budgetary impacts of all these items. I think maybe including something like that would be helpful.
I think so, yeah.
And just to remember too, there is a lot of detailed staff work and heavy lifting going on in between. We're in mid-February, we're gonna pitch this to you at the end of June. You know, I suppose we could have started back in July, but the last 2 fiscal years, as we outlined this process, has been very effective. So I think as we unload that information and get it in package and you're able to look at it, I think you'll not only be able to ask intelligent questions as this unfolds, but we'll also be able to have intelligent answers.
My hope would be by the time we get to June, we all basically know what this is going to look like.
Yes.
And you're not pitching anything to us in June.
No.
We're all coming
Presenting.
together to agree on it.
You're gonna know what this looks like in May, and you're gonna have lots of time to read it, study it, and give direction. So, I think, follow the model of the last 2 years, you're gonna get everything you need. And if you don't, and in between, ask, and we'll get it to you.
If I could just, Gene?
Well, I think, your presentation provided us information about things that we have no, control over. And we can parse out from the budget what we may have control over as expenditure. Those are the decisions we have to make, but a lot of that is at the legislative level, at the state level, and workman's comp and so on and so forth, that's That's what we owe. There's no negotiation.
Right.
And then I'd just like to add one last thing, is that this is the third year now, in that 2 years ago, we instilled a culture of order up, work with what you absolutely need. And if by chance, somewhere during the budget fiscal year, we always can reallocate, we move monies around, do what we need to do to get what we truly need versus what we think we're gonna need, and then submit that amount. So I think the staff works extremely hard. They've shown that they've worked hard at that, and I no longer even consider that being the way it is now. It's this new culture that we've got, so. I have full faith that the staff will be giving what we actually genuinely need, so. With that said, thank you very much. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is the presentation of awards, staff recognition, and I believe that's gonna be Chief Troutman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Board. So, I get to be the talking head for a minute. No budget numbers in this presentation, just some of the great accomplishments and performance of our employees over the last year. We wanna highlight all those awards, and we took nominations into the end of December, and in January, our nominations committee met, came back in 2021, and we carefully went through all those nominations, and we selected, top employees for those awards, and boy, I'll tell you, this is my third cycle on our awards, and we had great nominations. We had a lot of nominations, and that initial meeting took almost 4 hours, 3.5, so filter to the top, cream of the crop, but there's a lot of cream out there in the crop. So, the first award that we wanna highlight is Firefighter Engineer of the Year. So this is a non-officer who has made the most significant contribution to the district during the past year. The recipient of this award will have an exemplary work ethic and strive steadily for their own improvement and the betterment of others. Also designated as the Masonic Firefighter of the Year, is the highest award bestowed annually on a non-officer. So that award went to Jonathan Scaife this last year. And Jonathan, he does excellent work here for the district in terms of our mental health awareness, resiliency training, which he actually does in the state here. He takes that program out and benefits the whole state. And also peer support here. So, you know, two hot topics that affect the fire service currently are cancer, which has a fiduciary impact, and mental health. And Jonathan filtered to the top here just with his incredible work with the district and the state. He's really assisting us with that. So we want to congratulate him. What I'll do, I think, is go through them all, and then we can clap and make comments at the end. So the next award was Officer of the Year. And this award is an officer who has made the most significant contribution to the district during the past year. The of the award is a strong, forward-thinking leader who faces challenges head-on and inspires their team to deliver with compassion and commitment. The Officer Year Award went to Todd Miranda. Todd is exemplary leadership within our wildland program. The state and the district leaned heavy on him last wildland season in terms of COVID-19 mitigation. Some of the work he did really extended throughout the Southwest with the overhead teams, and he became pretty much an expert on what mitigations we needed out in the wildland environment. And he was the go-to guy, and he worked hard to accomplish that. And the advantage is having him here in our district, deployed in our district, and the hard work he does to make sure that our wildland program and our response in the district is top-notch. Next award is the Administration Employee of the Year. And this is an employee in administration, or community risk reduction, or telecommunications and GIS, or fleet, who contributed significantly to the district during the past year. Recipient of this award will be committed to excellence and dedicated to the betterment of the district as a whole, contributing time and effort to exhibit the core values of the organization. The recipient is recognized as the Masonic Administrative Support Employee of the Year also. That went to Emily Garding, our own GIS specialist, who's worked on an extensive map book program, updating our hard map books, which is incredible, and the product that came out and the improvement was immense. Also working on making sure the right info's in our active 911 as we get dispatched, and various other GIS programs and needs. And then she's working with Alarm too on a group to look at next gen 911. And Emily's a leader out there, and she's done some impressive work. Come in and say hi to her every once in a while when she's up in the office. She sits in that office and works hard and produces a high product, and she does it without complaining and a smile. So very happy to have an employee like that. Next award is the Customer Service Award. An S&D operational support employee who internal and external customers first while balancing the interests of the organization. The recipient of this award will be or will demonstrate active listening, exceptional effort, unrelenting support, and to our mechanic, Mike Sheehan, and I'll tell you, he had quite a few nominations. He had a lot of nominations. So this was for the committee, it was an easy award to give. As everyone here knows, his dedication to our fleet maintenance and repair regardless of the day, hour, or weather. I think he delivers better in the postal service. You know, in one particular event that came up in the nominations is we did have Engine 531 was out on a dasher drill, and the weather got weird and started to rain pretty heavy. They ultimately canceled the drill, but 531 went down mechanical, and this is after hours, this is at night, in pouring cold rain. Well, calling Mike, having him respond out, having him listen on the phone, I know what that is, I'm gonna come fix it. And he brought his utility truck out, he repaired that right in the field and got him home. That's some pretty impressive commitment, so.
Sure.
Otherwise, the logistics would be roll it to the side, get our reserve engine change over, but having a mechanic that not only has the skill experience, but that kind of commitment. And Mike's another one, go say hi if you ever come by, he hides in that shop, it's not really hiding, he's working. I'll walk in every once in a while and yell, Mike, you know, see if he's in there. He says, yes, and he's a man of few words. But he is also a man of incredible action when it comes to the repair maintenance of our apparatus. The next one is the Community Service Award, which is a SFT employee group that demonstrates outstanding performance and dedication to the citizenry of Sedona and surrounding communities. The recipient of this award will be actively involved in the community, participating in volunteerism, sponsorship, mentorship, and general community service. And this went to Mark Feeney. And as you know, one of the epic accomplishments of Mark, it seems like now in the last few years, is his outstanding work on Toys for Tot and his creativity when it came to, you know, riding that bike and letting people participate virtually and getting it out on social media. And he did a significant fundraise there, and we all know, you know, that time of year, to meet some needs of families and kids out there. He did that, he literally carried that on his own back. You know, I wouldn't ride a bike next to him, unless my bike had a motor and his didn't. Congratulations to Mark on that. The last set of awards really are group awards, which for me as a fire chief, I have a particular, the fire service is kind of a team approach, and we work together, and it seems like we accomplish things by group effort and a collaborative effort. So when it comes to these group awards, my hat goes off, and I have a lot of respect for these. And I'll highlight first, we were able to award 2 unit citations. A unit citation is an operational crew unit or group that's demonstrated outstanding performance, well above and beyond the standard. The recipients may be recognized for a single act of exceptional effort, for generally exceeding expectations throughout the year, or for an unusually challenging assignment. So we had two crews actually. One was A shift down at Station 3, and their crew, led by Captain Don Arwin, responded out in the Beaverhead Flats area for a traumatic shooting. The individual actually received multiple gunshot wounds. Had a patient, they got a trauma call, and once the police are able to clear a scene to get paramedics in, the outcomes are rarely good. And not only did the crew rise to the occasion, they performed superbly, all of them. I'd like to read a lot of the comments from the Guardian Air, because we transported by air, and their flight nurse, their team was like, wow, you guys hit every mark. Not only that, there's an unusual thing that happened. To my knowledge, at least with Guardian Air, they won't transport a full arrest. Individual was in and out of heart rate and rhythm, and we have a machine called an auto-pulse, and that does automatic CPR, and it's incredibly efficient. We had incredible ROS rate, which is return of spontaneous circulation. Well, it was 2 years ago, we actually, or last fiscal year, we had one of those units on the base. We added two, one down at Station 3 and one up, I believe it's at Station 4. So we spread them out, or Station 1, I'm sorry. We spread them out so we can get them quicker to a patient when needed. Well, Captain Arwin said, we need to use this machine, and they did. And still, while the patient was in full arrest, typically the helicopter would say, oh, we don't transport, take them by ground or call it. Convince them to, let's leave the machine on and transport.
Good for him.
They did. Took him to Flagstaff, saved his life. He's talking and walking. This is the first time they put in a helicopter of full arrest with that machine. Now, it just so happens Guardian looked at that. They changed their policy. So now they will do that. So that's why that unit citation was not only important to the performance of the crew, but the unusual things and that decision and changing a policy. Well, what's that mean? Well, it means that downstream, there's probably going to be an impact that may save another life like that would not have been saved. So that was a great crew effort, great leadership. Second unit citation that we awarded was shift at Station 3, reactive station down there. Under that crew had been led by Captain Eric Lewis, and they had an unusual response, which was labor and delivery. Had a lot of challenges, and any of us know EMS, labor and delivery. If it's twins, you have 3 patients, right? If it's triplets, you have 4. But you start with 1, and you end up with 2. And the way we treat patients, sometimes both those patients can be critical. There's a lot of nuances. There's a lot of interaction. There's a lot of convincing family members of making good decisions. That crew patiently and assertively moved through that, and they had an excellent outcome. And again, hopefully, that child on their birthday will come by the station for the rest of their life and say hi, and maybe bring a pie. Who knows? So those are 2 just outstanding performances, those 2 crews. And then last 2 awards I want to highlight for outstanding community organization. We awarded 2 of those also. I felt it was warranted based on the nominations that were provided. So one of those is our Sedona Verde Valley Honor Guard. So if you're not aware, the Verde Valley Fire agencies formed one honor guard through the fire charities and participate. We have a really solid participation from Sedona. That honor guard deploys on various events. Obviously, it participated in Firefighter Tower on Bells Line of Duty Death Memorial, which I know some of you went to. Also our 9/11 Memorial Service annually, which I know all of you went to. And also different retirements, transfers of command, you know, we've been over there with the police department a couple times with retirement. But, it's an impressive group. They volunteer their time when they're off duty. They get those dress uniforms on, they look sharp, they're very official, they're very formal, they're very respectful, and it just brings a huge addition to the public image of the fire agency. The honor guard and how it operates, and that's what we wanted to highlight with this organization, is just the tremendous professionalism they've shown on all these events, and know it'll live on, and there's a need for it. So that was one of the community, outstanding community organizations, and the second one, another exciting group effort, but if you remember, actually, it was back at the beginning of the calendar year in 2021, when we had three, those we'll call them hikers, that got stranded up in the snow and ice on the backside of Bear Mountain. They went up unprepared, they didn't monitor the weather, and they got locked in there. And really, the ground attempts were not only incredibly dangerous, they were not gonna happen. So, called the state, we got the National Guard to send a helicopter crew, a Black Hawk helicopter crew that trained in high elevation snow and ice rescue. So they parked over at Sedona Airport. I think the three individuals spent 2 nights up there on the mountain without gear, without food, without warmer clothes. And that next day, as soon as the weather broke, and it didn't break, there was a lot of cloud cover, but enough to get a Black Hawk helicopter up on Bear Mountain. They did a hoist rescue out of that ravine that was phenomenal. Now, highly trained individuals, if you've seen a Black Hawk helicopter or rescue helicopter operate like that, it's incredibly professional, but these individuals knew what they were doing, how they train, and it's very extreme, very high risk. It's about as high risk as you can be. A helicopter that big belongs in the air, and if it falls out of the air unwanted, you don't want to be anywhere near it. So, it stayed in the air. Successfully rescued those three hikers, and probably if they spent another night up there, they wouldn't have lived. So it was that extreme. That pilot, that crew, they took that risk to come up here and save people's lives. So we've highlighted them, we've contacted them. They're a little disjunct from us, but downstream as we honor all these awardees. Of course, it's my goal 3 times in a row to do a corporate big, celebration with families. Will that happen? Well, I don't know. It's really up to the COVID gods and what we have to do, right? But we will honor everybody here. We are publicly, but with the awards and the certificate. And that particular crew, when we get it lined up, we might do something more special, and hopefully they can come fly up and land, and we can all be there and give them the awards and clap for them and appreciate what they do. These kinds of crews do stuff like that, and they go home and they don't talk about it, and no one hears about it. But I know 3 people that are thankful about that. So, that actually covers all of our 2021 award winners, and again, we're making the awards and printing certificates. We'll either do a corporate celebration downstream here, or I'll go one-on-one and stations and track individuals down and pull up in front of their house and throw the award through the front window and whatever it takes to get it to them like a mailman. So, that would conclude that part. So before service awards, I'll turn it back to the board. I know that was a long run. Yes, sir.
I'm curious, it almost sounds like a drama of a TV show, like, could that really have happened? And it really does happen. People's lives are saved. Does this, become a press release for the district or, on the web? And, pretty amazing to think that that type of talent and skill and daring exists.
And we will get out a press release highlighting them. We contacted all the individuals that they got the awards, bringing up the awards and the certificates. We wanted to announce it publicly here in our legal meeting, and then we'll follow up with the press release, and then also what that award looks like in terms of a corporate or tracking them down one-on-one at the stations. And that Blackhawk to fly up here, I'm gonna ask for a ride, I don't know if they'll do that. Anyway, yes, sir.
I have a meeting coming up with you pretty soon, I believe, one-on-one, and, we can discuss further, but, following up on that, as many of you know, I sit on the board of the Sons of the American Revolution, Prescott chapter, which is, been around since 1854. And we give out awards. You know, one of your members here received one. Following up with that, we have military awards as well. And so we might want to discuss a combined effort to acknowledge the efforts of this crew.
Absolutely, thank you.
Owen, Janet, anything to comment? The chief, again, on behalf of the board, these are very special people. And what I get from all this is that they inspire others. They inspire others to be better, simply by their actions, through their actions. And you can't forget that the people that surround them perhaps do the very same thing, and we just happen to recognize these specific individuals. But it definitely is a picture of the quality of people that we have on this district, that we expect, honestly, we expect nothing less than that. And so, congratulations to all those that we recognized. And if I may, if it comes to a point where you go one station at a time to recognize them, by all means, I'm sure there's board members here that would like to accompany you. And, please give us a call, and we can get, at the very least, one of us.
Absolutely, I would really enjoy that.
Okay, super. Unless there's anything else, we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which would be the acknowledgement of 20 years of service for those members. Chief?
Sure, so let's talk committed and dedicated employees some more, right?
Absolutely.
This is kind of unusual month because in terms of years of service, we have 5 employees hitting 20 years on the job. So, you know, of course, here in Arizona, when you look at PSPRS, the retirement system for our firefighters, that is significant because 20 years gets you to where you can retire. Fortunately, most of those 20-year firefighters stay, you know, another 5 or 10 years, get in the drop program, maybe at 25 and you get your 30. So, and we covet that because by the time you're 20 years on the job with one agency, you pretty much know the agency, have it wired. To the guy that gets the phone calls, hey, how does this paperwork work? Or, hey, how did you get that calendar? Or, when we train to do this, what do we do? And these are the individuals that answer from the top of their head. So, first one was, our battalion chief, George Baker. So he started his deployment in 2002 as a reserve. And he was made a full-time firefighter that same year, and then promoted to engineer in 05, became a medic in 07, promoted to captain in 07, promoted to battalion chief in 19. So, Lawrence had some special recognitions, 2008 Community Service Award, 2013, 2014, and 2018 unit citations, different rescues and fires. And also 2016, he was Officer of the Year. He has a lot of education and specialized training. Most notably is, Jordan was a U.S. Marine. Now, Jordan, and he pulls his ball cap down right over those eyes. I think that's a Marine thing. But you hear sirs, you hear yes sirs, you see him almost at attention if you're saying hi. But Jordan's one of our best leaders out there. He's a guy that doesn't make an excuse, or if he mess something up, he immediately takes ownership. But he's a go-to battalion chief that we just say, we need this, and I think that's a testament to the training he had in the U.S. Marines. Jordan went to Yavapai College for his AS. paramedicine, fire science, and he also has his bachelor's degree with honors from Grand Canyon University in emergency management. Well-educated, well-experienced, man, he's the exact kind of employee that you want. Here he is at 20 years, and here I am pleading with him to stay. Now, I'm not pleading, he wants to stay, but say hi to him, tell him he needs to be here another 10, you know, just encourage him, but military service was back in 1998 to 2000 as an infantryman in a security forces battalion. So that was Jordan Baker, 20 years. The second employee we're honoring for service time is Mike Durant. And you know Mike is our training officer. He's also hired as a reserve in 02 and promoted to firefighter in 08 and promoted to training officer in 2012. So Mike's been in that training officer spot for the last almost 10 years. So he's very valuable to us in terms of that history and knowledge and that whole division moving forward and organizing. In terms of education and specialized training, Mike's been through the Chief Training Officer designation from the Center of Public Safety Excellence, which is a lot of hoops to jump through and a lot of training. Also the U.S. Marine Corps leadership training. He's got his AES from Coconino College in fire science and his bachelor's degree. Our next individual is Rodrigo Sanchez, one of our captains. Also hired as a reserve with the other two and in 02 and promoted to firefighter in 02. Became a paramedic in 05, an engineer in 08, and promoted to captain in 2016. He's received the Firefighter of the Year award in 2006 with 2 different unit citations in 08 and 09, and the Customer Service Award in 2016. He has his associate's degree from Yavapai College and then also his bachelor's degree. And Rodrigo's another one of those guys that's probably one of the most positive guys on the job. You know, you could go up and punch him in the gut and he'd probably say thank you and make a joke, recover from it and move on. And so we appreciate that. We appreciate that, just that contribution to the positive culture, you know, keeping the head up, keeping things going forward. He does an excellent job. The next employee is Alan Schumberg, who also a reserve and became a firefighter in 02 and a paramedic in 06. Engineer in 2012. He is currently one of our TRT members and instructors. Does an excellent job with our TRT team. And 2013, he was Firefighter of the Year, and he was citation in 2014. Another solid engineer that we have. Engineer's always in a great position because it's someone with experience, it's someone who knows the apparatus and equipment. It's usually somebody who leads in different special operation training, and TRT is a big deal, and he instructs that. And that's, of course, a critical part of our mission here. Finally, last but definitely not least, is Jarrett Tarver. And coming out as a reserve in 02 and a full-time firefighter in 02 with the other gentleman, and promoted to engineer in 07 and to captain in 2017. Boy, he's got 4 unit citations here from 2013 to 2020. Also, he's got his AS degree from Yavapai College, and I know Jarrett is another great leader. He's kind of one of those guys that's a big guy, and he'd probably crush me anytime he wanted with his bare hands, and he'd probably do it in a kind way. But it's very hard to make him upset. He's a super kind, intelligent guy. He's a great fire service leader, and I know recently he's been doing some teaching at the college, which, man, for a 20-year guy of his stature and leadership, to give back to young people that are trying to do what we do and get he's actually a model for that. You know, that's what you do. You get the years on, you get the strikes, and then you turn around and say, hey, I want to help you. So, you know, it took a bit there, but highlighting 5 employees here this month that hit 20 years is a big deal. So, congratulations to them. I'll turn it back to the board.
Thank you, Chief. Any comments from the board?
Question, and what do we do to acknowledge, other than at the board meeting, the 20-year service individual?
them a pin for their uniform, and I shake their hand and I give them a coffee card on me. That's what we've been doing, you know, if, we can get back to our awards in a corporate session. One of the ideas we had is do service awards for that year at that one corporate event too, so they can come enjoy that, you know, and bless them and their family. But they do get the war stripes and the handshake.
I think so.
Yes, sir. All of it. Chief, if I may, again, as I recognized or acknowledged those that were award winners, these members with 20 years of service, again, they are the leaders of our district. They're the ones that others lean on and lean towards, and you got to take a look at who they model their management style, their dedication to service after. And those are the very same kind of people that came before them, that I'm sure there's members on the district right now that are looking up to these people as to how to do it right, and to do it right every day. So 20 years is a milestone. They're on the downhill side, and we got to get them for everything we can. But and I'm sure they realize that. But it is those members that we will utilize their expertise for projects down the road. So with that, congratulations to all of them. Thank you. Okay, we are now to the regular business portion of our meeting. And Chief, do we have anybody in the public wishing to speak?
No, we do not.
Okay, we can skip the next thing. Next item up is the consent agenda. This is the January 18th regular meeting minutes is the only item on the agenda. So with that said, I move to approve the consent agenda as noted. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is our financial report and updates from our Director of Finance, Gabe Bolton.
All right, well, good evening again. Before I get into the, January financials, I do want to let the board know, we did receive notification from GFOA that we were awarded, the Certificate of Financial Excellence. We're working on finalizing the ACFR, and we'll get that into the county by the deadline on the 25th, and then also get it submitted on to GFOA for the award again for, last fiscal year.
I would ask, whether it would be possible in the chief's, comments to the Red Rock News, mentioning that. Public really needs to know. 2 years in a row.
This is number 3, right?
Three.
We can absolutely do that.
All right, so, January, tax levy revenue was at, $676,000. You'll see, we're about $48,000 ahead of what, we projected for the month. Non-levy revenue was at $183,597. We were under, for the month by about $27,000. And really, ambulance revenue was driving that number. We saw a little dip in ambulance revenue. And looking at some of the billing reports, looks like there was a little dip in billing for the month. Not necessarily our volume, so I'm assuming they've been impacted by some of the illnesses that have been facing a lot of agencies out there. But we'll continue to kind of monitor that. Expenses through the month are, in good shape, as you can see, across all major categories. We are under budget. I will point out that, we have been trending over on overtime, but fortunately, savings and some benefit costs, as well as regular wages, has helped offsetting that. So, we're not immune to the overtime, costs that are being incurred, by everyone else, with people being out, sick and a lot of other things. But fortunately, some other areas within our personnel budget are keeping us under. At year to date, I know That's interesting. I'll just tell you the year-to-date numbers. Year-to-date, our total revenue's at, 14.1 million. We are over budget by 964,000. Of that variance, property tax collection, we're ahead by 320,000. But the non-levy revenues, are ahead by 638,000, with, ambulance, revenue really driving that number. Like, as I mentioned, I think a couple months ago, it's been a really good transition for us on the ambulance. Looking at expenses, our total expenses are 10,206,000. We are, 734,000 under budget throughout the year. As I mentioned before, with the month, personnel, despite the overage we're having on overtime, we've had some also full-time holes, which has created some regular, personnel savings as well as the associated benefit costs. Buildings and land is at, 201,570, which is under budget by 32,000. Vehicles and equipment is actually right in line with budget, at 356,000. I noticed this month, our fuel came back in line with budget. I don't anticipate that staying. I'm wondering if there's a little bit of timing there on when we got a fuel bill. But that has been really what's driving our vehicles and equipment to be right on budget, because we're actually below on that fuel line item. Communications and IT, is again under budget, $467,000 expended. And, our managerial expenses are at 515,000, which is 24,000 under budget. Year-to-date, standpoint expenses, are looking good as far as our budget to actual. We've expended, 60%, with 40% of our budget remaining. As far as a percentage of expenses, personnel are at our highest at 85%, followed by operations 7%, and then managerial and communications are both at 10%. And this is always kind of an important slide when we get to budget time, and especially when we talked about the numbers that we discussed that we're going to have to deal with next year as part of the budget, as they're outside of the district control. But personnel is our highest, so we don't have a lot of other areas to reduce the budget, if that makes sense, as a percentage. You know, we obviously do everything we can, and, you know, Mr. Chair, you set that direction for us to, everybody to continue to sharpen their pencils and identify the specific needs. And they all have been doing an excellent job at that. Unfortunately, it just makes up a very small percentage of our budget, so it's important to know. And finally, last slide, year-over-year cash position, we ended the month, at 15.7 million. Total cash on hand compared to 13.1 last year at this same time. Our other assets did decrease slightly, and that's just a function of our annual depreciation. And our, total liabilities decreased slightly from 28.7, to 28. That, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the financial report.
Questions from the board? I do have a point I'd like to make, and, this primarily for the board, as we review these monthly packets on the financial report, that you put a very comprehensive report together. And at times it makes it difficult to drum up a question because everything always adds up. But I will say that your summary is what I keep my delving into the numbers at hand. I look at that and I draw arrows and circles and highlight different colors. And I start comparing where are those numbers over on our profit and loss budget performance. And you can start to see how these trends establish themselves. And that tends to flow into the 12-month cash flow, and you can start to see how things are going up or going down. And when you put these things together, you see the picture a little bit clearer. And none of us up here are accountants, but we do like our personal checkbooks to always balance out. And that's what we see here. And these by no means are our personal checking accounts, but they are definitely big numbers that always come together. They really do. And to that, I truly appreciate that. And it makes our review of these that much easier. I do have a question on one sheet, though. It's, the recorded fixed asset purchases. And, I see we dedicated some funding towards replacing an old AC unit at Fire Station 6. Fire Station 6, this is more for the chief, I suppose, is our newest station. And now I'm seeing we're getting into the replacement cost for mechanical equipment.
And that, I think that station was 14, does that sound right, when it was built? Yes. We're coming up on 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Certain components of the station, any facility, obviously, the high-use type of equipment, like an HVAC system or a fan, or we're always gonna, repair maintenance going on that. Sometimes it's general, sometimes the system breaks. So, the older that station gets, we're gonna start to see normal kind of repair. Kind of like if you buy a brand new house, once the warranty goes out, is when stuff starts going out, like the washer, the dryer, the oven. So if you get that extended warranty, we don't typically do that with the public, but, yeah, so we have a budget for normal facility repair maintenance over the year, and that's what that would fall under. It's just because and it's high use.
And lastly, can you explain to me what a Boulder vehicle is? Boulder. It was, acquired, purchase, but I don't know what that is. It's
Where we look,
page 11 of the 20-page report.
try and pull it up and see.
Okay, unless that's a typo.
14.
Page is it,
Under,
yeah, James gonna look at the number on that, and that's probably a better way. I think I know what it is, but we'll let it call it if you can pull it out.
Just I thought, I'd bring that up because it was a little odd to see a Boulder vehicle.
Especially for $16,500.
Big Boulder. Could be the vendor. Well, I'll tell you, we can move on while you keep looking that up, and we'll just keep plugging along. So with that said, and that was the conclusion of your report, Gabe? That was the conclusion of your
Yes,
report?
that was the conclusion.
Okay, with that said, I move to approve the January 2022 finance report. Do I have a second?
yes, I second.
Do you have a second? Do we have any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Finance report for January 2022 is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up on the agenda is our fire chief's report. Chief Troutwine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Board. So, I know I have Jason online. I don't think I have, my two division chiefs, so I'll report out for them. But as you can see our general slide here, you can see our activity there in January. We don't have it split from 2021 comparison, but we'll get that, corrected there on next meeting. And you can see our normal, call volume there, split per station, which is a pretty normal, split there, as you normally can see. So let's kick over to administration and have our Director of Administrative Services, Heidi Robinson, report out.
Really see the highlight of my presentation, the fire chief. Out here, Lex, so thank you for making it through the meeting so far. It's a lengthy one so far, lots of information. So I'll brighten it up with some news and events. We've been, as the chief has mentioned, our focus on community health and, internal community health. We've, the chief has put together a couple of committees that are for the wellness of our staff. That's our Cancer Prevention Committee and our Mental Health Committee. So we've gotten that from both administration, executive leadership, and the membership at large. Those who are interested and dedicated to those pieces. And we've got quarterly meetings for both of those committees. We've convened both of those in the last month to make sure that we're planning. All of it has a budget component, so making sure that we're not only have a strategic plan for how we want to implement these endeavors, but also that it has a budget component, and especially so. So we're getting together with that, talking about what we can do for pre-cancer screening, doing that as part of our annual physicals, getting those tests out there and doing a lot of preventive care, doing what we can to support our members. Might have needs if there is a cancer situation and that kind of deal. And then the mental health component is the same thing, trying to make sure that we've got resources available, that we're doing our very best to find resources in our community. We're a little hard pressed at this time, and it's been going on for a couple years, that there is really a shortage of mental health care professionals to meet the need. Community at large, and particularly first responders, finding them that are qualified for the type of trauma and mental health processing that the first responders need to do. We want to make sure that we're getting skilled professionals to help out. So working on those pieces, making sure that we're well trained, that we have a good resource, and that we're getting that information out to our folks. So for quarterly meetings, those will resume. We'll update you if we have any kind of projects that we're able to put through. As the photo shows, credit to Chief Coyle, who took that photograph of Chief Troutwine, and Christy Coyle, who participated in Run Sedona. So the event was very successful, a great collaboration between the city and the vendor and Sedona Fire and our community members and those who come to play here and work here. And so a great event. Congratulations to Chief Troutwine, who had a very respectable finish. We're very proud of him. And then we'll give some kudos to Christy Coyle, who placed first in her age bracket for the women. So well done. She's a personal trainer, and got him together on a program so that he was fit and ready for that race, and we look forward to seeing them both participate in our community as we go forward. So really exciting and a great way to participate in the community. Obviously, lovely day. Chief Executive Officer training happened just last week. Goodness, time's flying. We sent Chief Booth, so our new fire marshal, participated in that training. It was down in the valley, organized by the fire chief station. Lots of good participation. We're hearing, had some great feedback. Chairman Soto, you were a presenter there, I believe. And so it was just a great educational opportunity to get some really interactive training for that executive level training in the fire districts. And so glad to send our membership, glad to send our experts there, and look forward to next year. Some staffing updates. We'll talk, I'm sure, in the individual levels. We'll talk about our recruitment and our new hire update. Welcome, Kimberly Smathers, our executive assistant to leadership. We did do the introduction and the bio for Kimberly in her absence last meeting, but here she is today. You see the person behind the friendly voice on the phone, and so do come when you say hello. We have your meeting. Getting her well versed. She comes with a great background and a lot of public service, and it's getting her attuned to the ways of the fire service and the fire board to meet your needs and those. Great fit. We're so excited to have her. Recruitment. We are getting prepared for promotional pieces. We're getting ready for captain's testing, so we got that letter out to our neighboring agencies today to ask for their experts in panels and interviews. We've all been part of those processes, and we'll get that started. So getting our next, what we anticipate to be a very active captain's list, what with everyone hitting their 20 years and some anticipated retirements while that list is active. So looking forward to that. As you well know, we have a quite extensive recruitment taking place, will be taking place in our IT department. So we've been working together, Chief Coyle, our human resources, analyst, Fiona Freeman, and the fire chief have been working together to really get those job descriptions updated, really current, really modern, with great certifications and requirements available, and get those out to the right places to search and really aggressively recruit for those positions so that we can, along with our IT assessment that's going on, kind of rejuvenate and build that department again. So we're really looking forward to that process. Any others? Have I missed any in there that are in there? I didn't make my notes. Okay. So upcoming, we are still planning for the annual award. We do hope that the declining COVID numbers that Chief Coyle will report on, I hope, be able to do something together as a group, invite the board, invite the community, invite the family to be able to honor everyone who's worked so hard these last 2 days without an in-person recognition and celebration of all of our hard work together, which is really what it's all about, is this chance for us to come together and celebrate the fact that we get to work in this great place. Still trying to talk about that SPD, SFD picnic, some kind of game. We're thinking a little cornhole competition, possibly. Don't let anybody know if we've got some we're going to do for. We just have word that the St. Patrick's Day Parade so far is a go in the community, and Sedona Fire really probably couldn't be more excited about that. We've loved participating in that. We get engine 541. My goodness, that wasn't going to come out the right way. Usually leads that parade. In the past, we've had one or more board members on one of our UTVs to participate in the parade and see all the community members. It's a great family day. It's a great community day, and we look forward to participating in that again. And we'll reach out to you if you want to get on board on one of those rigs. That's the end of my official update, and so I'll just go with the mental health moment as I normally do, and we'll talk about February is Heart Health Month. And so here I am in red. Go red for heart health and the awareness of that. Heart disease, heart failure, cardiac, it's not foreign to us here in Sedona. And affecting women, large percentage there. And then we're going to talk about, because it's a mental health moment, that heart-mind connection. And so really making sure that we get that balance in our life, and kind of talking about that, remembering that mental stressors affect you physically, and a place that it shows really predominantly is in heart stress. So taking care of your body and your mind together, talking things through, getting the preventive care that you can in all of these ways that we've been talking about, just really focusing on all of that, and the joy of coming together and working as a community. That's the end of my report. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments.
Any questions for Heidi?
No, but if you haven't done the St. Pat's Day Parade, you should.
I have, and it is a great time, so I'd encourage, once you reach out to us, to say yes, and get your right on the float.
Green on.
I think I should get a special spot with a name like McCarthy. If I'm not mistaken, there's another one here called Feeney.
There's also a McNeil.
And McNeil.
Yeah.
We'll talk about our history.
Yeah, there you go.
All righty, well, thank you very much,
So
Heidi.
the only thing, sorry. I'd be interested what the recruitment plan is for your IT folks, and are we doing anything special for people? Because I'm thinking, Sedona is not always the center of IT activity in the universe.
You bet, and I think it's probably, we'll consider this a destination position. Chief Coyle, I think, would probably plan to address that in his report, and he's up next.
Yeah, you can, and we're changing it up a bit, and we're getting some outside consulting that we didn't use before, and I think it'll help us do it. There's actually quite a few IT positions open in the state too, so it's the same kind of workforce issue. It's like you gotta attract the employee with your, wages, benefits, and your environment. we think we're gonna pitch that pretty good, you know, as we look at that. And yeah, Chief Paul, when he gets to, wants to get a little more in depth on that, but I think, we're gonna give it a pretty good effort here. And, we're gonna, concerted effort to get those people filled and then keep up over 20+ years.
All righty, well, thank you very much, Heidi. Chief, back at you.
Sure. Chief Cole, you're still with us, right? Would you like to go with your operations report?
I am still with you. Thanks, Chief. You got me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, good deal.
Okay.
So we'll start at the start. COVID-19, new cases across Arizona and US continue to drop rapidly. Basically, our trend lines following Denmark and South Africa. And, you know, I remember guys always talk about the R value and gosh dang, I can't remember when the last time I talked about it in a favorable way. But the R value is the number of people that get infected by one person. And usually it's been 1 point something, 1.2 people. So it's indicates an increasing number of cases. Right now it is 0.57 in Arizona. So that means that one person is only infecting 5/7 of a people, or 0.57 of a people, 57% of a person, maybe. That's right, I would say that. So that's good. That's really good. We hope that this trend line will continue in the direction it's going right now. Anticipate the restrictions to maintain until the end of March at least, and then we'll reevaluate as per our previous plan based on what information we have at that time. And it is important, I think, to also mention that although the conditions are getting better, you know, this Omicron has had a significant impact on especially the unvaccinated, and deaths in the United States are up to 950,000. So it's pretty likely that we'll actually see that million before the end of this year. With that, I'll move on to operations. So budget effort for everybody, BC's, everyone that has a program, it's been a huge emphasis is making sure that we get those preliminary numbers in here, get clarification on what needs to be done, what can be done later. And I have all that data and now I just got to go through it all. So that's where we're at on the budget part of that. Another big effort that's going on around the stations is preparing for the company officers test, the upcoming test. And it's a great time to see those individuals that aspire to fill a very important role in the organization, perhaps even the most important role in the organization, to be out there testing and training, getting ready to get at it in March. I think it's important to remember too that we have upcoming the Sedona Film Festival and Mountain Bike Festival, not too far away. So it is probable that our call volume is going to increase significantly over the next month as a result of our springtime surge. So yeah, getting ready for that. We're also working with the U.S. Forest Service and the city of Sedona on the trail shuttle, attended a meeting of that specific to that a couple weeks ago, and also working with Red Rock Ranger District about the visitation issues. They've been great about allowing us to have a venue to communicate those along with the other public safety partners. And now looking forward to seeing what improvements this the trail shuttle that they're working on right now may provide. All right, wildland season update. So preseason wildland fire meetings are underway under the guidance of Captain Miranda. And I got to give a shout out to Sean Foster, who along with myself is a lead instructor for one of the 5 teams that's going through S420, which is a required course to be part of a complex incident management team. So Sean is the lead instructor for one of the teams, and I am for another one. So I think that's pretty cool to see Sean up there, representing us so well. Also, Mr. Todd Miranda is attending the course, and so working on that qualification to be part of the IM team. And the reason I wanted to highlight that in the wildland component is that, as we work on our preparedness, there's there's a recent article, I believe it was in Nature, that shows that the West is in a 1,200-year drought. And so odds are our wildland program isn't going to get any easier to deal with. Having people with the training and skills and experience to be able to operate effectively in that environment is, I believe, essential to the mission of the Sonoma Fire District. Moving on to, I'm going to do telecom and then GIS, because the next slide will have some GIS-y stuff on it. So with telecom, as was discussed earlier, working on the job descriptions, and we went through everything from, it's fine for us to have a cute name for what we want to call things when we're not hiring for it, but when you're going to hire for it, you want to make sure that that cute name lines up with what all the search engines look for, or what people want in that job look for. So that, in addition to going through the job analysis, we're going through I didn't want to call it job analysis because it was not that formal of a process, but going through the job descriptions and making sure that the language was updated to reflect, current terminology, current certifications, and yeah, that sort of effort, and then ensuring, like the chief said, that we make sure that we're being competitive in the wages and benefit package is part of the effort. The other part of the effort was looking at what search engines could best allow us to access the individuals that we think would be a good fit, values wise, and then with training and education wise for these positions. I'm excited to see where it goes. I think it's across the board, through those different components I just mentioned, it is the most purposeful effort that we put into these positions. And I'm excited to see what results we may get from that effort. So other workforce telestaff big deals is that the other telecom big deal is that workforce telestaff is ready to go back live on the 19th. Jeremy Harris, before he took a position down in the valley to be closer to his wife, he was instrumental in helping us get here. And now we are dependent upon our engineer / IT person to carry us across the finish line with this, with Bob Motz's help, of course. And then the other stuff that's going on in the telecom division, I think you all might be interested in, is that we are working with Merit and other vendors to make sure that we maintain continuity of operations as we transition the workforce from what it was a month ago to what it will be in the future. And during all that, also continuing to communicate and move forward with the Pegasus project for the telecommunications assessment, which is, it's interesting because there's a tug to stop the long-term planning while you're working on these near-term emergencies. But I think we will be rewarded for prioritizing the near-term efforts that we need to maintain continuity of operations while still moving forward on those more strategic initiatives that are necessary to ensure that we can that our system becomes more resilient and more able to withstand disruption. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is GIS. Yes, please, thank you. I saw the little cursor. So before I get into all these cool dots, training, some of the things that were accomplished this month in GIS is that Emily provided training, which was initially going to be face-to-face, but we had to adapt, follow our mantra that we need to adapt to our environment because the environment will not adapt to us. And we went online with that training, and she still delivered ArcGIS field maps training to the majority of the operational personnel. One crew's left, and I reached out to the crews afterwards to see how the presentation went, see how Emily said. And I think between, there was I'm just blank on exactly what was said, but that Emily's delivery was between a Zen master and Bob Ross, and it was excellent. And I was like, oh, I like that. So the other stuff Emily's working on is oh, by the way, since Dave, I know this is near and dear to your heart, is that that is for the engine company inspections. That's a new program that we need to use because our old program is end of life and is no longer supported. So it's so we can continue to do those company inspections and the pre-plans. And we also are working on, or she finished the survey reporting form for our radio communications plan. And then this is how cool we're getting. We have a QR code. She's working on a QR code right now. So it's a little pixelated square that will access all of the different map products and forms. So the goal is going to be that instead of updating these QR codes and have them point at each individual product, that we'll be able to take this QR code and slap it on all sorts of SFD stuff from our tablets to whatever else. And then if crews are out in the field, they need to report fill out a damage report on an engine. They need to do a TFR request. They need to ask for a wilderness intrusion. They need to access map products. They'll be able to hit that QR code and it'll bring all those up so we can access them from the field remotely without having to remember a bunch of different locations. And then when we update them, not like the older version of the form is still on the computer, they will still be able to grab it. So that's one of the other things that Emily's working on. And just to kind of close out, this is a heat map. If you've never seen a heat map, we had a request for a heat map. So Emily and I kind of geeked out on it for a little bit. And the largest map is all of the calls within the district. And the yellow colors are the areas where more of those calls occur more frequently. If you look up to the upper right-hand corner, that's where the EMS calls are. So you can see concentration in the Village of Oak Creek, and then concentrations within the city of Sedona, and then, up the canyon, kind of intermixed out there, and then a few dots around elsewhere. The MVA UTV calls, that was informative to me because there's, what's it called? Recency bias. When there's the things you hear about the most recently, you tend to give it more weight. And we've been talking so much about the 525 road, everything that's been going on there. I recognize that I had developed an inappropriate frame for where most of our MVAs occur. Just because every time I think, when we come up with a UTV rollover out the 525 road, oh, there we go again. And certainly those call volumes have increased, like I showed you in the past. But the majority of those calls still occur along the highway corridors, the vast majority. And then if you look down to the bottom, the two yellow blobs, the largest yellow blob, there you go. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody want to guess what those are? Where those locations are? Nobody?
Airport.
Cathedral Rock, Bell, and then the smaller one right below that is Bell Rock, and then the one up to the north is Volk. So yeah, I think the crews would be surprised by that, but I was surprised by how well they were represented, especially when you look up Oak Creek Canyon 50% of the way, and you see the red dot there, and that's Slide Rock. So we go to Slide Rock a lot, but not as much as we go to those other places. That is the end of my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Oh, Bell Rock.
Bell and Cathedral.
So
Yep.
Chief Coyle, I want to thank you. I know that I made work for you, but I really appreciate the work that Emily put into doing this and your leadership on it. I think it's very informative, and to me it speaks to paying attention to where our calls are coming from now, and not to make work for you, but it makes me think that we ought to be thinking about doing something similar with our plan reviews so that we know where the building's going to be coming, so we can think about the future. But this is great, and thank you for being so responsive. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. I'll pass that on to Emily. And I like I said, I learned some stuff, and it helped me to challenge some of my own biases that I didn't even recognize I had.
But Chief Coyle, as I look at this map, first thing I noticed right off the bat is that the definition of it is so much clearer than I've seen anything before. With that said, this is exactly the thing that I would like to see on social media at the appropriate time. You know, whether it's at the end of a given period of time or getting ready for an up-and-coming season, to reach out to the public as an educational tool as to where our fire district spends its time. At least responsive locations. So, it was a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I will definitely pass that on.
You do. Nothing else? One last question, Chief, and I'm not so sure if it's Chief Troutwine or Chief Coyle. With the COVID remasking, is there any projection for an end date? Is it trending down? Is it still trending up? Or is that something for Ed Mazulis?
No, well,
Chief Coyle?
yes, sir. Thank you. The number of the incidences of COVID that we've had within the Sonoma Fire District have been up over the last month, most definitely. And with one exception, I believe that our 100% masking policy has prevented there from being any known, at least station to station spread, or crew member to crew member spread within the station. It's primarily been household contact, which is the main way that this last spike has become a spike. At March 1st, we're going to reevaluate that situation. So we're being purposeful about being iterative and waiting until then to reevaluate the mask standard, just because it's a novel environment that we think we know where it's going, but we elected to wait until that date to make a determination on what the best course of action was.
Okey-doke. Thank you. Chief Troutwine?
Yes, sir, thank you. So I'll report out on community risk reduction, and you can see we had code consultations 9 and our inspections 97. You can see the breakdown by our inspectors and our fire marshal. Fire marshal did 43 plan reviews, and also we did 2 Firewise home assessments. We had 67 system reports in the compliance engine, which is an excellent tool for us to make sure fire protection systems are working out in the district. So when we need them, they work. A couple of real notable things are exciting. When you go by CRR and say hi to the staff, we received our iPlans electronic plan label. So through Yavapai County, it's all electronic process, the plan review. And this is a great table. Our fire marshal can see, expand, note. It's all electronic. It's a very high-tech piece of equipment and a great addition to our efficiency and effectiveness there on the plan review. And also you see our Verde Valley Burn Permits website launched in January here. So and this is a collaborative effort by the Verde Valley to have one site where you can go on and click and do your burn permit electronically. Of course, burn permits are an important thing here in the Verde Valley at certain times of year, and so we want people to have access to that, and we participate in that, all our fire marshals, and through Alarm. We coordinated that, and I think it's an excellent example of that kind of regional support and coordination that we're all trying to strive for to improve the service here in the Valley. So we'll see how that tool works. I think it's going to be good. And then under the open burn permits, just in terms of our safety message, so obviously certain times of year that's allowed. There's strict parameters on that when you get that permit. So our recommendation is always follow those strict parameters, always follow the direction of Alarm. And our fire district and fire marshals, when we give that, what we don't want is accidental fires because someone didn't follow the permitting process. We know that's a valuable tool for people to manage their property, and also to mitigate, growth on their property, which helps us too in the long run. So, again, the safety message is follow the permit, only burn on the permitted days. We want those burns to be controlled by you and not out of control where we have to respond. Any questions on CRR? Very good. We'll go to operational support. And one EMS activity I wanna highlight is this week, next week, we have quite a few personnel that are doing their EMT and paramedic refreshers. So, we know our EMTs and our paramedics, they have a certain amount of, continuing education or CE that's required annually. So when they get up to their recert, one of the practices we do is a week-long class. They get that seat and updated hands-on to make sure they're proficient. So once you become an EMT, once you become a paramedic, there's continuing training that we focus on so that we can perform adequately out there in the field. And that's a big deal in our EMS division, and we support that and get our people through those refreshers so we can keep everyone qualified and certified. On our fleet, looking at that Boulder LLC, and Ed could answer this. Anyway, that is part of the rescue truck build. The Boulder LLC is the company that builds the box on the back. That was a vehicle that will become our new rescue vehicle where we carry our swiftwater rescue, all our rope rescue equipment on, so to carry out our TRT mission. That's what is the build out on that.
That's the Boulder vehicle.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So I'll say on fleet also, the other command vehicle and then the rescue vehicle, those are under construction. It's a little slow going because of materials. For example, that box and then, some of the light packages and things that we need to completely outfit it. Quite frank, we got the vehicle, we're just waiting for that equipment to come in so they can outfit it. So it's a supply chain issue that's hitting the whole industry, so that's not uncommon. The other thing I'll say on fleet is we look at the capital plan in the next couple of years, we have 2 pumpers coming up. So the apparatus committee has met, led by Chief Cochran, Chief Mazulis, and they're honing down that specification for those 2 pumpers. And we're going to the manufacturer so they can put in that rig what we need to serve this community. So as we walk that down, Chief Mazulis ultimately will, in the next hopeful couple months, be able to bring the request to the board so we can get those approvals. And it's capital planning money that we've already planned for. But those 2 pumpers will replace 2 rigs that are currently hitting their 20-year lifespan. So those are gonna be important for us, and they're gonna improve our service in fleet. Also, they're gonna, when you get a new apparatus, there's always little bugs to work out. They're custom built, but once they're in service and on the road, there's usually less downtime. You know, the older a rig gets, there's more repair maintenance on it. So if you get a newer vehicle, it stays on the road longer, it's less work for your mechanic, there's warranty. So I think this is gonna be good. Now, just so you know, we'll get the spec, we'll get it all approved, we'll order them. But the build time is pretty excessive right now because of the materials and supply chain issues. So for example, they may tell us it's something like 12 to 18 months on build time. Really unusual for a pumper. Pumper might be more like 210 days, 6, 7 months. So could that change? Yeah, maybe things get rolling and the parts start coming in. But it's important for us to finish this fast, to get the approvals, get those things on the supply line so they can outfit them. And most likely, instead of doing 1 pumper and then a second pumper the next year, we're going to order 2 at the same time with the hope that we can lower the unit per cost price, and knowing that supply chain issue is going to delay the projects. So that's coming, and Ed, Chief Mazulis will do a great presentation to you on those. Thank you, Chief Mazulis. Yeah. So training, you can see just a breakdown of the different types of training we do, and I want to highlight some of that down there on our total training hours, 1414, but some of the type of training we accomplished. And this isn't low-level recruit training. This is professional firefighter veteran training. You can see Mark Feeney completed the peer fitness training reports, and he's one of our peer fitness trainers, and he's perfect for the job. Like I said, don't get in a bicycle race with him. You'll hurt the next morning. And just what a great committed individual and example to all of us really on how he's leading that area. Also, we've, you know, as I stated, we've got different individuals completing their CPR, ACLS, PALS class. As part of their EMT continuing education, we have individuals in our paramedic refreshers. Pete Combs and Feeney completed their FEMA National Fire Academy Incident Safety Officer class. And the National Fire Academy offers a pretty good curriculum of different types of coursework. And the neat thing about that, it's funded through FEMA, and typically they pay almost the entire cost of our employee to go do it. Sometimes it's cheaper for us to fly an employee back to Maryland for a class, let them drive over to Prescott, stay in a hotel for a class that we can get the same training. It's much cheaper because FEMA will offset all the costs typically with the exception of food. And we have a per diem for that. So we did get a couple of our employees there for the Incident Safety Officer class. Also, another big training evolution that's been going on is our last couple weeks, just our refreshers on our technical rescue, rope rescue, swiftwater rescue. Of course, this is the time of year that we do that have to keep our individuals qualified. We're going to hit rescues all year, and then a certain part of the year we're going to hit swiftwater rescue. And our rescues, when they get complex, you know, like the helicopter rescue on the backside of an icy mountain, our people have to rappel and set up systems. They can carry a high risk, and swiftwater is a very high risk event. It's very dangerous for us to make those kinds of rescues. But what do? Well, we buy the correct apparatus and equipment, and we make sure our TRT people that are going to affect that rescue are qualified to do those annual refreshers and training. And there is definitely a cost to that when we put our person in that training and we backfill. But it's a necessary one to complete that mission. You see also that Greg Everline completed his 300 Incident Command System and 400 Advanced Incident Command System class. So those are critical for our officers, captains, battalion chiefs, chief officers. Great classes, and again, you see our training hours are really breaking down some pretty significant technical training, but it highlights our training division, it highlights some of the complexity of the things we have to do, but we're finding the right source to get that adequate training. So that will conclude, or actually close the comments on the operational support for EMS training fleet. Any questions?
No, sir, Chief, I think that's about it.
Excellent. So to finish off the chief's report then, we want to highlight a few more areas, and the strategic plan is one. I want to make some comments on that. And, you know, we went through an update probably about a good solid year ago, and we've got an excellent update plan that we actually have applied and we're working through as we speak. I want to make a comment on that at the end of this, but the thing that we're refreshing to get caught up is a format where we can track and a dashboard and do a better public presentation on that. You know, a lot of fire agencies, it's important to have that strategic plan, and we do that, we put it on a website, but not a lot do a tracking mechanism like this. And I know we were firing that up and we held because of a personnel change, but back on that training, we've had some essential lead staff members that did some refresher training on this programming on February 8th, which will continue through March 15th. March 1st, our entire strategic plan committee will get that refresher from our Invisio format training. And by March 15th, the staff will make sure they get in their areas and all the proper information's loaded. Again, it has the goals, the strategies, the actions, and it's broken down to tasks and what it takes to complete that goal ultimately. And we'll give an additional report here in April, and our goal is to get you one of those dashboards when we get it all built out, and you can see exactly where the strategic plan. I think that'll be a good tool to show where we're at and how we're tracking, and also not just for the board, I think for the community. And one of the things in parallel we're doing is a final professional copy of the strategic plan that has all the elements, which will look similar to the annual report that we do, that we could board chooses, we'll do hard copies for you, and then we'll make that available electronically on our sites, or the general public and anyone can click on it and see the whole strategic plan head to toe. So, one thing I want to emphasize that I haven't over the last year is, once we updated that plan, we applied it and we've been walking it down. What we haven't been sharing is just the tracking of it, because we're trying to get back into our Visio. So, like, for example, I want to give you a couple examples. Goal number 1 is to create and maintain a mission-focused culture with an emphasis on health and wellness, to reduce injuries and other negative impacts. So, a couple areas under there, under our strategies and actions. One is personal protective equipment. So, we made it a goal the last 2 years to ensure that all our operations people have 2 sets of turnouts. You know, with our cancer prevention, that's critical, because you want a fire, you saturate those turnouts, you take them off, you decontaminate, you clean up, and then you put your second set on while you're cleaning the first set. We accomplished that goal. And one thing to note, and that's directly under the strategic plan, and that's directly what we've been doing last year. And one thing to note when we talk about the plan informing the budget, yes, it is a line item, so we could make sure each employee was outfitted with 2 sets of turnouts and accomplished it. So that was one area in Goal 1. Another area under Goal 1 I want to highlight is new fitness equipment. So that's part of our health and conditioning. We're able to acquire new fitness equipment and spread that out at the stations, so that our troops have some modern fitness equipment to condition, to manage their mental health. Again, this is something that we budgeted for. So, accomplish the strategic plan. They are interwoven and are connected. Goal 2. I had to talk so much tonight that the batteries are going out. Goal 2 was to provide a long-term durability of the organization through some. A couple things to highlight there, under there with our strategy and actions is capital planning. We have been working on a better detailed capital plan and guiding with the budget. And also our budget process, you know, it's public, it's open, the workshops are open, but it's the goal to a good budget, but also that education, how we're doing it, access to that. So I wanted to make the note as I kind of updated work on plan and this tracking mechanism to get that back online. And as we updated this, we've been accomplishing it. Let me read them and itemize stuff every time. That's going to be. But once we get that formatting and that dashboard, then quarterly we can do a little. So, but you know, I think this is a really good strategic plan. Pretty well with the budget. Staff and groups, work groups that are knocking it out and doing a big job, and it's exciting for me when I read. Are there any questions on the?
Probably a couple. Helen, I'll start with you.
Well, no, I'm just looking forward to seeing the results of the work that you're doing, and seeing that's hard to have a question when I can't see it, so, I'm looking forward to that, and I'm excited about what you're doing.
It sounds like, so we're not seeing it so far, but it sounds like you're on your way to accomplishing the goals, and, forward to, getting more.
Al?
No, I'm fine. I just, I'm on several other boards, and this idea of the strategic plan scares everybody, because it sounds like it's just too big of a project to ever succeed at, but you've broken it down into a process. And, it probably will be a strategic plan that actually means something, you know?
Comes to mind, how do you eat an elephant? one piece at a time, and that's how you get these things accomplished.
You know, Chief, we all look forward to, as oversight, to see the progress of this. And we know that the strategic plan basically is that freeway that we take to get to accomplishing our mission: safe, safe, friendly, dedicated service. And along the way are all these off-ramps that allow us to get there. And when we accomplish that and make that trip all the way down, we've accomplished the intent of that strategic plan. We as a board are totally interested in measurement of each and every one of those individual goals. And obviously, how we get there is up to you and how you do it with your staff. The method in which we measure each one is what's going to make a lot of sense, not just to this board, but to the community that is reviewing it. So we look at it in its most easiest format that will allow us to make that kind of observation on the measurement of what you're doing. And so I, for one, as the rest of the board, are eagerly waiting when that day happens, and I know it's just right around the corner. And I think we talked a little bit about it just recently with admin, and we're well on our way of really showing we're pretty close on accomplishing that strategic plan and really preparing for the next 5-year window. So we're getting there. So thank you for all your work and staff's work in trying to get to that point.
So the next item on here was just Station 4 construction. So when we hit last year I've been telling you we're holding. And my plan was really to hold about a year. March will be about a year. That was smart, based on analysis. And in January I've talked to several builders, talked to architects, kind of bounce things off to see what. So we've had some really good discussions on, what right now is the estimated per foot cost. I like asking the several different builders to see if they're all saying the same thing or if there's an anomaly. And all of them gave me a decent range that was pretty. Not the cost, but it's good that I. We talked about what a contingency was like. Some of the builders, normal contingency project might be 5. Some of them are pushing 5 or 10. But again, that's going to affect our out the door cost. Now, the nice thing about contingency, if you have a 10% contingency, the project comes in into the capital. The other question I had for them, just as an update, was how we doing on materials, how we doing on supply chain. That's a mix. The 3 builders I talked to and the architects I talked to, that's kind of a mixed answer on that. Some of them paused, some showed a little concern. Others were, you manage it. So, for example, if they're building a project and you know what materials they need over the month, or let's say a year, typically you build or you order materials in. A lot of the builders now are ordering them up front because they know there's your lumber. You might not put the lumber in for 6 months, but if you order it now, it's been on the lot for 4 months and it's ready. Sounds like they're getting ahead of the materials and the supply chain in that manner. Order early, get ahead of it. That's important on the design part, though, that they know exactly what they need to do. Stuff back and you don't make you. That's another thing we've discussed. Also, what that bill's going to look like. Hard bid, additional approach. It's probably more effective approach for what we're trying to accomplish. We'll walk that down over time and explain what that is and where we're headed. So I'm just updated you on some general information. Where we're at is one of those vendors last year we'd approached about phase 1 and then with them, and we're going to already develop a scope. So get them on that. It's kind of a general study, we'll look at some properties and what we're, and, I'm saying we are, and we'll push them to a phase two. The phase two, it's gonna be a little more expensive, but it's a little, look at that property, we all know that there's a lot of complexity. And that will be like in-depth study on where the, on the surface, figure out all the potential surprises before we start knocking things down. Kind of mixed answers when asked about that. It's stuff under there that people aren't aware. Remember, that property's been there for 50 years. Developing this whole community, this valley 50 years ago, did they pay a lot of attention to certain things? Probably didn't have to, you know? Area, there's not a lot of development. So, we'll get that speed, before the end of this. Then really, we're gonna start talking dollars, costs, how we're gonna lock that down, what type of approach we're gonna do. Those all be presented to you. One of the other things I would say, just to close off that, this, I wanted to camp on it a bit. Interesting, I know there's been a spike in cost of building construction here because of the pandemic, it impacted it. But if you look at the 20-year trends, pretty much construction costs is consistent. There's one moment, 2010, which is recession, 2011, but actually the cost lowered, then started on that upward trend. So we've been on a 20-year upward trend. Why is that important? If there's an expectation that this cost is going to stabilize or lower, that's probably not going to happen. And no, I'm not a predictor of the economy and all that. That's not my expertise. But just kind of get that out as we talk about it. You know, I know the paper did some articles, and they reports and the analysis from which would be, that's not going to be accurate to the analysis we're going to do. The cost is vastly different. So, that's why I haven't been throwing numbers out, because until it stabilizes and we get down to number to you with all the metrics and the data, I'm very leery about that, because when you get a number that you know is grossly low based on current construction, that's not something you're going to hear from me. I want to give an accurate number. So just to kind of warm up to it as we walk it down, we're going to look at all that analysis and metrics. Well, we already, I think, as a district, have told that this for all the vital reasons. Now I think the as we walk this nation to sell to the community, or that here's where we're at, and here's how we're going to get. So, more to come on that. Are there any questions on that?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
It sounds to me like if we're reaching the place where it's appropriate to have a plan, to
Yeah.
have a timeline, and doing that. When do you anticipate that the board would see that?
Yeah. So we'll get the 2 feasibility studies done first, continue to monitor the environment, see what the conditions of the supply chain are. That will come when we finally hone it down to what type, if we're gonna do the part, which I would recommend, and we do an RFP and get a company that whole time.
I understand that's at a very detailed level, but I'm talking about high level. When would you anticipate Station 4 would be done? Right now, just off the top.
Well, that's a good question. I'd have to work with that CMAR. Probably in the next 2 years.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that high level kind of plan.
Yeah.
Not the detailed construction plan, because I know that will come.
Yeah, well, but based on that construction and what the project is and how they'll develop the timeline, I can't say it's gonna be a 6-month, 1-year build. That depends on the design. So, and I think the timing of I want this thing approved and well on its way. Time it will be when our financing for station drops off, that'll time for taking the new flow, so.
You know, I'm glad to hear that the need and the enthusiasm to continue with this process is there, because I remember when I first ran for the board, it was the top of mind issue with the electorate, the idea after the bond issue and everything about the idea of rebuilding Station 4, because it needs to be a modern station in the heart of Sedona, and then eventually Station 5. And I think it's good to know that cost may be up, but it's up everywhere, and we're committed to the process way or the other.
Question. No, not only the rising construction costs, put this project on hold, but also the inconvenience of where do we put the IT equipment? Is that at all solved yet? Well, it's being.
In terms of the tower, is that what you mean, the tower, our equipment building, or infrastructure?
Correct,
around
yes.
it? That is the least wise to try to move it. Now, we'll let the design happen, but a lot of complexity moving a tower. Have to build a new tower and equipment building. Test it, over, then take the old. So, because we're looking at some of that analysis with the communications system. And we're gonna, when we bring that to you, there's gonna be that would work if we moved it.
We can build around all of that.
Yep, yep.
You know, Chief, as I hear you present your presentation, it brings to mind, what are we doing for marketing of our fire district? We're doing a lot of things just to maintain and make something new here or a new plan there, but how are we marketing this so that the community is better educated, more acceptant of it, of whatever we do? And when I do look at, for example, your strategic plans, so once we get to that point where we have a quality means of measuring our progress, and we get that out to the public so that they can see what we're doing, where we're at, then I see how do we inform the public of not only what we're trying to do because of need with Fire Station 4, but the cost factor, availability of materials factor, and labor. All of that needs to be like preloaded through a marketing plan so that when it does happen, and in a couple of years, a program like this, like a build, isn't very long at all, that we have that already on board. And I look at the means of our website, social platforms that we look at that we're already involved with weather information, incident location information to the general public. And I'm looking at the numbers here that there's over 13,000 followers on social media. When a particular incident comes up, over 14,000 and 10,000 people are looking at these things. I think that's extremely important that our fire district is taking notice of that, and we're utilizing it to our advantage, so that when we get down to those raw numbers that we're facing each and every budget year, Excel becomes much more tolerable. And it's never easy, because you do have to know what we're doing, and so that we're conveying the correct message. But I think it all comes together to one big package of marketing. I look forward to seeing what sort of ideas you have that the board can be apprised of and moving in the right direction. So.
And I appreciate that input, and yeah, we'll definitely in parallel be doing. Working on updating our website, excited about that because I think it's gonna be a better platform than our social. Trying to make that interactive and updated. Dialogue on that.
Good, alrighty. One more point?
Sorry, off on Dave's comment about, the public's feedback, negative or positive. Do we have any of that yet? Has anybody been weighing in on that?
No, it's just the old data from. We're gonna have to go through a process to update all that input. Modern, current information on it. 5 years ago.
I think,
Thank you.
the public, unlike the time period during the bond movement, I mean, there was a lot of turmoil, a lot of dissension. Al and I came on about that time. And, I think most of us kind of keep an ear to the community. I haven't heard anything negative about the department or you. And we're involved in social organizations and that sort of thing, and I think we would have heard it. But I think that the chairman's right. We need to market this department in especially what we do and what our future needs are. I come to think about Station 4. And previous to your comments about Station 4, it was about new fire engine, new apparatus. How much wider is it and how much narrower is the door at Station 4? And we have, with the exception of the newest station, we have older stations that we haven't, they weren't built to take on the new apparatus, either in width or length.
Or weight?
And or weight. So those are some of the things that maybe we can't get into the weeds with the public with, but there must be some way to express what we believe the future of this district, what the future needs are going to be. And just feed it a little bit at a time, don't overwhelm them.
Well, you know, the social media outreach is one step in the right direction, because I think in the last 3-4 years, the public is a lot more aware of not only what the fire district does from incident to incident, but the complexity of the tools of the trade that they have at their disposal that don't come for, they're not free. We're lucky that we can acquire them. Remember, that was one of our points, you know, that we spoke about before, about the gunshot incident up on Beaverhead Flat Road. That particular piece of equipment, remember when we were running, we were talking about how the district owned one of those and how it had the ability to keep somebody alive through a machine, you know? And so here it is, 2 years, 3 years later, you own 3 of them, and they're actually functionally doing the job of saving the lives. And the cost of that machine is nothing compared to the value of that person's life. And I agree with you. The Station 4 may be abstract to the general public as to, looks like a perfectly good building to me, but we can afford the best because lives are worth the best.
Thank you all. Chief?
Thank you. And then to finish off the report, you can see we mentioned the social media outreach. We have good following out there in the community. And so, thank you letters or donations to report on. So that would end fire chief's report. Unless there's further questions or comments.
I think we've hit them all, unless there's any other questions or comments. Thank you for that comprehensive report. Our last item on the agenda is what we always finish up with, and that's where we just start on one end of the table and for the board to give us a little insight of what your interactions were with the board, or with the chief and the district. So, this time I'll start on my right. Al?
Well, I believe I have a meeting with the fire chief coming up here in a week, and I look forward to that. I look forward to the St. Pat's Day Parade. I hope the big giant fireman is part of it, because that impressed me. I was in charge of the parking for the marathon, so I saw a lot of people coming and going, and a lot of smiles and faces, and I guess it went without a hitch. I don't think there was a medical emergency as a consequence of that event. Weather was perfect, and to see the public engaged with all the public services, the fire department, the police department, everybody engaged.
Thank you. Gene?
I too will be meeting with you Thursday, I believe. I'm looking forward to that. I have a whole laundry list. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But, I look forward to it, and, today was a good meeting.
Good. Thank you. Janet?
Yes, I think I also have a meeting coming up. I'm not totally, and, I look forward to our meetings, our one-on-ones, and,
Okay. Helen?
Well, I don't have one coming up until March. But, so my interactions basically have been stopping in to sign checks and doing some stuff like that, which I'm happy to do. And, I look forward to that St. Patrick's Day Parade. We make meals very much,
It is fun.
want to be out ahead of the McCarthys.
All right. I had a unique experience this past month. I was asked by the Arizona Fire Chiefs Association to be a presenter at their fire executive officer training, and that was mentioned earlier. And the subject matter was what the boss expects from their chief. And so my name popped up, and I was asked, and I said, sure, I could do that. And then as time went on, we're getting closer and closer to the date, and I was starting to get a little nervous here. What is it that I really want? What is my expectation of the chief? So to make sure I was on the right path, I polled the board. And I got great information from each and every one of you, as well as the chief. And all of that information was incorporated into the presentation. And there was 40 students, if you will, executives. Mind you, a good half dozen were already seated fire chiefs of their own respective districts. But the rest of them were chiefs of various levels with the intent someday of perhaps having their own fire district. And so with all of the input that I had from those members, the board, and the chief, I was able to put together a presentation that covered about 6 different major points that allowed me to discuss bullet points from those, and I was allotted an hour and a half. I had one co-presenter with me. We kind of bounced things back and forth. But that hour and a half presentation actually went to 2 hours, and not one person was ready to leave when we were done. We had that good interaction. I will say that at that level, they are not afraid to talk or speak up. And they had great questions. And so, again, it was with your help that the presentation, I feel, went without a hitch. So I'm looking for feedback and to make the lesson plan or the presentation better. And if it's something that the chief officers want, again, for the next series of classes, that I'd be more than happy to be another presenter. So
Sounds like a road show to me.
it's coming, I could tell. I just got to start figuring out a fee schedule. No, it was a great event, and it was all under the guise of volunteering to do that, and it was well appreciated by all those that attended. So, with that said, I don't see anything else happening, and this meeting is now adjourned.